today I'm going to talk real quickly about test instances using the reporting database and using a feature in the cookbook called collection. So let's move on to test instances. So the test instance is a every month we clone the production database, and so on the first of the month when you log in into your test instance, you see a copy of whatever was in your production account the night before. So about 45%, that's probably a little bit over 100 clients have set this up. This is something that people have been asking for a long time, and I think it's been available now for roughly a year. Your primary use cases around this will probably involve training some end users who might otherwise be concerned about people seeing their work or their initial efforts when they write definitions or try to document specifications or what have you. It's also a great place to set up custom workflow testing because anything that goes wrong in the test account does not affect in any way the stuff that you're working on in your production instance. And for Enterprise Plus clients, this is a great place to start doing some testing involving the IData Hub and its integration components. There are some key differences in the test environment from your production environment. So the first one is when you log in, the external authentication that you may have set up, you know, your LDAP or your shibboleth, is not enabled. So in the test environment, you'll have to set up, you'll have to authenticate directly. That can be done by remembering your previous password from when you were maybe initially created, or just simply by resetting your password using the link on the login screen. User notifications are set to never by default, so no mail is generated. You can re-enable these notifications on a case-by-case basis, and so it's a great way to involve only the handful of people that you need to work with on testing workflow, for example. You can also set up temporary users, right, in case you want to impersonate 2 or 3 different roles and then see how the notifications work. And finally, there is no community set up in test. Anything you have imported from community will be available, but there's no option to do anything more. To get yourself a test instance, pretty simple. Have one of your cookbook admins send a request to support. That's support@datacookbook.com. We'll set it up. It doesn't take very long at all. If you are using external authentication in production, you may want to go ahead and set a local password in your production instance, and then it'll be available for you to log in with those credentials on the 1st of the next month. All right, the reporting database. This is a live real-time copy of production data. This is actually something that's been available for several years, but it has not been super widely adopted. It's not what we make available to clients is not, of course, an exact copy of the database, but it's organized into a set of views to make it easier for you to report on things that you might have interest in. You will see some of those on the next slide. The primary uses for this that we've seen are management metrics. So for example, reporting on activity and progress in the cookbook. Another use case is to get more detail. So for example, you can export a list of definitions from your cookbook application, but you may want the version history, or you may want additional detail that's not part of that export. And you may also want to export things like specifications or users and user activity. And then what we've seen as well is that clients will import this into another data store and make it available as part of their institutional reporting environment, or such as something like a data warehouse, or used to annotate reports that are shared with end users. The key things that you'll find in the reporting database right now will be information about definitions, specifications, and user activity. This will continue to grow. So for example, collection details and quality rules, and as well as information about workflow and objects in progress are all planned for release to this. And we're of course always taking suggestions for information that people want to see, or if there's something that's out there right now that you want to see in a different way or have additional things added to, please let us know. The next shot here is something that you might do. This, for example, is kind of manage a metric. In our demonstration account, what are the top 10 specifications by views? I don't actually know why this shows 16. That may be a situation where the label doesn't match the query. Something I'm sure no one's ever experienced in real life. Another thing you may want to do is look at real detail. So this next screenshot, this is what it looks like when you connect to the database via Microsoft Excel, right? So I can see on the left-hand side there, that's the list of views that are available to me. And then in the right-hand side is this a sample of the kind of information I will see in the definition versions view. So you may just want to import the entire stock of information that's out there and access it via Excel or put it in a small database of your own. Finally, collections are a relatively recent feature. I think they're about 2 years old. They were introduced to provide a little bit more assistance as you are documenting and organizing your data catalog. So your specifications are a great tool to capture reports or individual dashboards or integrations or APIs or things like that. But they often are published as part of a larger project, right? So for example, any particular dashboarding tool, you may have a workbook that contains multiple worksheets for things like iPads, surveys, or external responses. That's a situation where you may have to put together half a dozen to 12 or even 15 related types of outputs. And you could also use this as something like a documenting, in a landing page in a tool like Argos or Business Objects or Cognos, where a user might log in and have a number of canned reports available to them. Or this is even a way where you might want to show some detail about the way that that information goes from a source system to something that's visible to an end user. Only about 20% of clients are using this so far, so there's room to grow with it. I think they are a useful tool. Some detail about how you might use them. So the first thing you've got to do is define collection types. This is the same thing you do in the cookbook around your specifications. So for example, you might have a collection type of fact book or survey or reporting tool, workbook or something like that. They are not at the level of detail of a specification, so there's only 3 tabs: an overview tab, a functionality tab, and then a technical details tab. This is generally a place to get started and then drill in for additional detail. So you'll link to related specifications. You can emphasize key definitions either inline inside one of the text fields or via the sidebar. They utilize out of the box a workflow that is very simple, very similar to the existing specification workflow. This may be the sort of thing where you want to simplify that down so that it may only be 2 steps in it. On the next slide, we have an example of a collection in a sample collection. Right, notice that only 3 tabs are available to us: overview, kind of a text description; functionality, which is going to be more of a kind of procedural, what does this contain? The functionality tab will also have a list of all the related specifications. And then a technical details tab, which works very much the same way the technical details work in existing specifications. Notice on the sidebar, right, a number of ways to allow people to dig in and see additional information that they would jump off from in this collection.